Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 77. This week we're looking ahead to the summer tour to South Africa, and we're asking who should be rested and who should be taken along. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. Slightly later than usual, but we just thought after the stress of the Six Nations, we just take a few extra days to compose ourselves before we pick things back up again, as we're doing now. I'm joined, of course, as usual, by Dan. Hi, mate.
Akers, hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's time to turn over a new leaf, and focus on the positives, and focus on moving forwards and what the future holds for this England side. So I'm keen and I'm ready to get stuck in.
Yeah, I think so. And actually, in fairness to us, I think last week we came out quite positive overall, saying, looking at the positive parts, and we are still positive, but there definitely are still questions that need to be asking. First of which, so I'm going to jump straight in with a question I have for you, actually. So I remember post 2003, and it was there was a documentary done on obviously the World Cup winning guys, and as part of this documentary, the reason I remember this is because I only watched it the other day, is Johnny Wilkinson said that the thing about that England squad is that once you went away from camp, it was an environment that you knew you wanted to be part of. So when you went back to your clubs, you did everything you could to ensure that the next time an England squad was announced, you were part of it, and it energized you. Whereas I guess here's where I'm going with this. Maro of Itoje, after the weekend, he had a great game, man of the match performance, didn't look at all tired, didn't look at all, sort of contradicting what we said. But he said it's great to be back in a sort of loving environment and friendly. Was he referencing England? Is there perhaps a part of that England squad where they're not feeling the love, where they're not sort of desperate to be part of it because it doesn't quite have that sort of same aura that perhaps the sort of 2003 squad does? Do you think there's any legs in that?
No. Yes and no. I think let's not forget the 2003 squad and Johnny Wilkinson and what he's saying. It's coming from the point of view of a World Cup winner. Post having done that, post having won that World Cup. And so I think, when he looks back on his time as part of that England squad, I would imagine that it's almost impossible not to focus on all the highs, of which there were obviously plenty. Yeah, I think probably. I'm speculating, but I would imagine it's very difficult not to look at it with rose-tinted glasses. If you look at these England boys, I imagine that if it wasn't for the fact they've just had, the worst Six Nations in however many years it's been, they would probably have fairly rose-tinted glasses too, because they've had a pretty phenomenal 2 years. Pre this Six Nations, I'd imagine they were all pretty high on life. And obviously, you come off
Let's hope that's all.
Well, yeah, let's hope so. But you come off a campaign like this. I don't think you can help but feel down and feel like it's not a particularly loving environment. You've got, the media, the fans are all on your case. How loving can it be? I mean, you would like to think that Eddie Jones is giving them all a lot of abuse in the changing rooms to try and get them to turn this sort of thing around. So it's probably been a pretty tough 6 or 7 weeks for these guys. Or certainly a tough sort of 4 or 5 weeks, the latter 4 or 5 weeks. So I would imagine he's probably reacting to the previous 4 weeks, and he's come back, and maybe a lack of media training has just meant that he's said the first thing that pops into his head, and now it's easy for us to kind of jump on it and go, oh, is the England environment really toxic? And I don't think so. I think, these guys, it's weird because before this Six Nations, we looked at this squad and we looked at Eddie Jones and what he's doing with this squad, and it was like, yeah, Eddie Jones pushes them harder than they've ever been pushed before, and they train up higher than, more intensely than match intensity, and they're all loving it, and it's great to see they all want to be involved and everyone's fighting for a place. And so you would think the opposite. So I personally think it's down to the last 4 weeks of that Six Nations campaign and the impact that losing has had on a team that doesn't up until that point didn't really know how to lose, bar that one game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you. And like you say, it's so easy to, you have a bad few weeks. It's so easy to jump on these things. But another part of me, sort of, I guess, a bit of a follow-on from that question, as you mentioned there, sort of Eddie Jones probably is giving them bollocking in the change room. We know, sort of in life and rugby and anything, not everyone reacts well to that sort of necessarily constant sort of pressure bollocking. Some people do need a bit more mollycoddling. Is there a danger? And I'm not saying there is. I'm sort of asking what your thoughts are. Do you think there might be a danger that some players don't react well to this, and then maybe we might be missing some tricks, not necessarily having the best players, because some players don't necessarily react as well to Eddie Jones's style as others do. Whereas you look at other environments, perhaps a Joe Smith environment, where it seems like the players are treated a lot more as individuals. There's not necessarily one way of, everything's brutal, everything's on the edge, everything's harsh. People are treated more sort of about what's going to sort of motivate them individually.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So again, this sort of a two-part answer. Yes, I've just said that Eddie Jones will be giving him a bollocking, and in my head, when saying that, I'm picturing him in the changing rooms at half-time or at full-time, immediately after the game. And I think at that point, it's okay. I don't think you need to worry too much about how players react, because you kind of expect it. You put in a bad performance. I think though, with Eddie Jones, actually, that isn't his style. I think he trains them hard for sure. But there was a very interesting video interview it wasn't done by them, but they posted it by the guys of the 1014 rugby blog. You can find on Twitter. They're brilliant guys for statistics
you love
analysis.
These guys,
well, they have some really good stuff.
They sound really good. Yeah.
And they posted a video, and it was basically Eddie Jones talking about what it is that what it takes to be a world class coach. And this was when he was back with Japan. So he may have changed, but I would imagine that his coaching style is pretty much what it's always been. And actually, he was the one saying in that exactly what you've just said, is that everybody is individual. And one of the most important things in the early stages of coaching a new team is to identify how each player reacts to different ways of encouragement. Some of them, they want to be told what they're doing wrong so they can go and what they need to improve on so they can go away and get better. Others need to be told what they're doing right, so that they can kind of feel sort of full of confidence for the things that they're doing, correct, rather than focusing on the negatives. And he made a real kind of song and dance about how important it is to look at each player as an individual and focus on the best way to coach that person. So I think he probably is doing it right. But I just think that and maybe Maro of Itoje is one of the guys that likes to be told what he's doing wrong. But it's still kind of hard to, it's still tough to take. And so when someone pops a microphone in front of your face and says, "What's it like being back with your club? You've just had a man of the match performance." You kind of go, yeah, it's great. Loving environment, loving life, not feeling tired at all. Sure. You've all been abusing me saying I'm too tired. I've just done that. And not really thinking about the impact that has. Not that I think he has to, but it's obviously then easy for us and the other media outlets to sort of jump on that and go, "Ooh, is there problems in the England camp?" I don't think so.
So a few points there. Firstly, good answer. Completely shit on my point. So thanks, Ackers. Thanks.
I thought that's how we do this.
Thanks, Eddie Jones.
I thought that's how we do this podcast.
And secondly, you referred to us as
media outlet.
To other media. Yeah. Do we consider ourselves a media outlet?
Why not?
Sure. I'll go with it.
It's a new type of media outlet. As yet, it's down the pub media.
Oh, down the pub media. That is one of my favourite types of media.
Yeah. But there you go. That's my response. But I'm quite, it probably seems like we pre-planned these questions. We didn't. This was off the cuff.
No, I don't pre-plan a question to completely mug myself off. So yeah, they're not pre-planned.
Don't you? But yeah, anyway. But as much as you may have liked that answer, check out the 1014 guys. I know.
I've had a look at them. They're good. I do enjoy their stuff.
I was talking to our listeners.
Oh, right.
But yeah, you check them out too, mate. Anyway, so yeah, I think we're still probably at that point where the guys they're kind of still reeling a little bit. I think And it probably speaks quite volumes to the kind of the mentality they had going in, which important to learn this lesson sooner rather than later. You can't go into any game expecting to win. Well, maybe expecting to win, maybe you can, but do you know what I mean? You can't go in thinking you don't have to do anything, and it's just the win's just yours because you deserve it, or on paper you're the better team, because you get shown up as England did.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And actually, another thing, I'm going to use another quote. And when there was listening to the, I can't remember which one it was now. I think it was a BBC Sport podcast with Hugo Monya, and Jamie Heaslip was on there. And he said this in a different meaning to what I'm using it for. But they said, what's one bit of advice you'd use? And he said that talent is nothing without discipline. Now, he meant that more in an individual perspective, as in you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't, train hard and have the discipline to do that, it comes to nothing. But actually, I think that's something that England need to look at from a team perspective. So, yes, amazingly talented players. Yeah, great players, but our lack of discipline on the pitch, and I am taking this very literally, but
you're right, though.
Our lack of discipline on the pitch has shown that all that talent, if you keep giving away penalties everywhere, if you keep messing up when you're in position, you're making your life like 10 times harder, if not impossible.
I was going to say near on impossible at this level. And I think that's the key thing as well. It's all well and good looking back at the Six Nations and going, or any competition, and sort of saying, oh, well, we gave away 20 penalties. Not that they did, but, we gave away 20 penalties against Italy and we still won. There aren't, most of the games you're going to play, most of the important games you're going to play are not going to be against teams where you can get away with giving away 20 penalties. Yeah. Clive Woodward said it back in the day, it's got to be single figures, to win at the highest level. Eddie Jones, I think, believes the same thing, but England were giving away a lot of penalties at the time and he was trying to deflect. So he was like, top teams give away penalties. I don't think he really believes that. I think he also believes, single figures is what you want to be targeting. And 100%, it's surely the most important thing. Well, we're not going to go over and over the same things, but discipline and that breakdown. If they can get those two things sorted, then I think it's a completely different looking England side.
I agree, and Eddie, like you're saying, when he says that, so it's frustrating from a fan point of view because he's so hard to read. But this is not me having a go at him, because it's also one of the things I respect most about him. Like, what he says, you have to take with a pinch of salt. But as a payoff, it does, like you say, it deflects a lot of attention away from the team, which I think is his, large motivation. So although it sounds like I'm having a pop at him for doing it, it's actually something I respect a lot about him and the way he approaches it. So it's hard to know what's been said behind. I think before in England camps, you probably got a better idea of what was actually happening behind closed doors. Whereas with Eddie's camp, I find it a lot harder to sort of really get an idea of the dynamic going on in that camp at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, well, so...
Go on.
I was just going to say, so the next thing we probably want to look at is kind of the next phase for England, and obviously that's the South Africa tour. I mean, we briefly touched on it last week, but I think that's probably where we want to start focusing. Unless there's anything else you want to cover before we hit. No,
I was looking to do that. Like you say, we did mention it last week, but actually we've had another week for those thoughts to percolate in my brilliant mind. So I've got some views myself. Some absolute stonkers.
Well, before we jump into it, and we're doing this. We talked about doing this anyway, but it's been great to have some feedback from one of our listeners. So Andy McCurley, you got in touch with us on Facebook. He said, "Hi fellas, do you think there's any benefit to taking a whole second string of players for the tour to South Africa, just to see if they're a good group of players that can tour together, and also to give the current players a decent amount of time off? I'd certainly like to see how our up-and-coming players perform against tough opposition."
So my thoughts on that are take a whole second string at the moment. I don't think you take a whole second string. I think the more I think about this, the more I think you do rest a lot of players, particularly those Lions players, maybe other players who've might have just been involved in England, but maybe are in Premiership finals or whatever, who've played a lot of rugby. We don't need to go through them individually. I think people know who they are. Eddie will know who they are. And yes, I agree. I want to see some of the up and coming players, but I only want to see these up and coming players if they are realistic prospects for 2019.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I don't see much point. Like, even like Jack Maunder on the tour last year, scrum half when he went to Argentina, it was kind of pointless because then, and at the time Eddie said he's picked the best people available. But as soon as there's an injury to scrum half, Richard Wigglesworth comes in. Next in line was probably Dan Robson. Jack Maunder's not really in with a shout at the moment.
I agree. Just briefly stop you there and just say I think the Argentina tour is a completely different beast. I think that was about identification rather than who is next. And Eddie, of course, Eddie Jones is going to say I've picked the best guys available because he doesn't want to turn around to the players that he's got with him and say, "Hey guys, you're all shit." But I
picked some good players,
but you're young, so I thought I'll give you a crack because it's a bit of a laugh. It's a bit of a joke tour. I think that was about identification. Are there a handful of people amongst this group who have the potential, possibly before the World Cup, but certainly looking beyond it to become the next crop? And I think that was what the Argentina tour was about. I'm with you. I don't think that's the answer. Now, I think if England had done the Grand Slam and they'd performed brilliantly in all their games, and we were pretty much looking at our World Cup 23, I'd be inclined to say why not? Give the World Cup squad a rest and give these other guys a chance, just as much as anything else, just for a bit of experience. But that's not the situation that we find ourselves in. So I agree with you that we do need to rest players. We need to rest certainly key players. I think anyone who's almost guaranteed their position should be rested. I think the Lions obviously should be rested, but there's going to be one or two positions where there's still a lot of, and I think the back row is in particular because of the problems that we've had in the back row with the breakdown and everything else. I think we have to be looking at. Is there someone else out there who's ready to put their hand up, who can become our specialists at the breakdown?
I've told you this a million times. Don Armand.
Well, Don Armand obviously is now he's broken through.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I hope to God, and I'm sure he will go on the South Africa tour. I'm sure Sam Simmonds will. I think we mentioned this last time. Actually, from a back row perspective, I think pretty much all of them can go.
Yeah, you've also still got the Curry brothers, Tom Curry.
The Curry brothers. In my head, this is not having a Laws or an Itoje as a back row. I would actually like us to move. Personally, I'd like us to move away from that now and be like, do you know what? They're our second row now, so our back row are Hask, Rob Shaw, Billy, Nathan Hughes, Sam Simmonds, Underhill, Don Armand. Jesus, we've got a lot of quality players there. The Curry boys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I agree with you. I agree with you. It's about getting the right balance, and it's having guys that can do what England needs to do. And maybe we talked about this during the Six Nations. Maybe the game plan has been wrong as far as the breakdown's concerned, because there are guys in there who know how to do it. They know how to compete at the breakdown. They're just not doing it. So is that a game plan in order to give them numbers in the line and not commit as many players possibly? But it's now time to say, okay, look, we need to have people who are specialists at doing that. We need people who are going bull hunting. That's their one of their main roles.
One of your favourite hobbies, isn't it?
Bull hunting.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm really laughing at my own joke there, and I don't know why. It was pretty crap.
Oh, that was a joke.
Sorry, mate. I'm actually going to giggle myself.
Me and everyone else listening didn't realise.
What I wanted to ask you. Okay, so which players coming in, potentially going on that tour? Who are you most excited to see? Who are you most excited on that? Because let's face it, South Africa are now going to pick their best players. They're not going. I don't actually know what their policy was before, but they weren't picking. I think they were only picking South African-based players. They are now picking players worldwide, so they will have a good team. They'll have a very proud team. They've been wounded as a nation from a rugby perspective. and a lot more, but that's not really for us to discuss. But from a rugby perspective, they've been wounded. They're going to want to come out. They are going to want to dominate England physically, so mentally, and on the score sheet. So, which England players do you really want, or which potential England players are you excited to see, and do you really want to see out there?
So, to be honest with you, because of what happened in the Six Nations, for me, actually, it's the guys that are part of the existing squad. It's I want to see them. I want to see them turn things around.
Okay.
I imagine you're talking about the people that are going to be called up.
Yes, I was more. I was. So let's take away the sort of, you can use fringe players. So for me, to answer that question, the three players I'd love to see most would be out there and getting some good game time. Would be Luke Cowan-Dickie, Don Armand, and Manu Tuilagi.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of those. I think Luke Cowan-Dickie obviously has shown that he's the next in line, and obviously he's in pretty special form in the Premiership. Don Armand seems to have just broken through to Eddie Jones. I know he was out in Argentina, but hopefully, he's done enough that Eddie will not only want to take him on tour, but be looking at him very seriously. And who was your third?
Manu.
Oh yeah, and so this is interesting, isn't it? Because of course Manu's just gone off injured again. But
yes.
as yet the details are limited. The best I've been able to find, or the most positive I've been able to find, was apparently Matt O'Connor, who's of course the Leicester head coach, has said that it is a pec issue. It's the other side, so it's not the one that caused him, caused him to lose 6 months. I think that was his first big injury, wasn't it? But it's the other side. They know that it was a problem because it was Manu that said, "I need to come off," and apparently that's not something that he does unless it's serious. But apparently in the changing rooms after the game, he was quite confident that it wasn't a major issue. And they're also now talking about how it's a good thing that there's a week off for Leicester, to give them a little bit more time to recover before their next game, which I think is against Bath at Twickenham. So they've got 2 weeks off. So the fact they're talking about the fact that a couple of weeks gives him a bit more time to recover, it makes me feel a little bit more positive that it's not as serious.
I feel. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, there's a lot of fingers crossed when I say that, because I really think it would be a real shame I think this is Manu's last chance, which is a slightly weird thing to say, but I think it's not his fault that he's getting injured. But I think that from Eddie Jones's perspective, if Manu Tuilagi is injured again and can't go on tour to South Africa, I don't think there's another opportunity, realistically, to say, let's bring in someone that hasn't played for England in over 2 years, in case he's someone we need for the World Cup.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with that. I think it'd be very hard to do that, sort of as from next year, which is for, and by next year I mean next rugby season, actually. So let's look at it from a season perspective. But I think you might be right. I think if there'd been a serious injury, and I think first he would have known by now, and they would have said, like, Manu tears pec, out for 8 weeks. I think we would have seen something along those lines by now. Now that is me, obviously, fingers crossed. I have no idea. Maybe it takes longer to diagnose these things.
So basically, we're calling bullshit on the Rugby Union podcast.
No, because there was, I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard something where they said it could be out for South Africa, but they did say if it's a pec tear, the chances are he'll be out. They didn't say he had it.
You said to me before we did this that the 5 Live Rugby Union podcast with Hugo Monnier don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and that you're calling bullshit.
Well, okay.
That is what you, Dan Wood, said about Hugo Monnier.
I love that pod. I love those guys.
But fortunately, there's absolutely no chance.
You're my heroes. I love you.
Fortunately, there's no chance that he's listening. So
yeah, true.
You're okay.
But no, Manu, and I'd love to see Manu out there. I'd love to see him get some good game time.
Would you like to see him tearing up trees?
Ripping up roads? Fuck, man, we've been through this. I don't like tearing up trees. That's why I made my own one, ripping up roads.
Okay.
It's not caught on.
No.
Not even amongst myself.
Bit like Toodles.
Toodles has definitely caught on.
Okay, so no, I agree with you. I think it'd be great to see him out in South Africa. I really hope that we do, because I think I still think he's a vital part of the England setup, and he just, in terms of giving England options, and in a World Cup where you have to be able to do that. I mean, that's the ideal scenario. Is it, because the trouble with the World Cup is you play so many games. If you have just a very small core group, really your game plan has to be the same for every game, and either that's good enough to get you all the way through, or it's not. Whereas I think if you've got a decent sort of variety of players, you can start to change it up a bit depending on who you're playing in order to get the best results. So I think, Manu Tuilagi would be a big loss to England if he's unavailable through injury again. So yeah, fingers crossed for him that it's nothing too serious. As we said, Don Armand, I think we will see him in South Africa, and I think it'll give him a real good chance to really state a claim to that England back row, whether it's starting or as a finisher or whatever, but certainly be part of the main squad. And then
do we know when Billy V's back?
I don't. No, I don't actually. I'll have a look, but that's got to be quite soon.
Yeah, because I'd like him to. I'd love to see him in South Africa as well, actually.
Well, I think if he's fit, he's surely got to go. Because despite being a line, I know he wasn't a line. He missed that too. So yeah, absolutely, he'll need the game time. But that would be, and I think that would be good. We've talked in the past about how he raises the game of people around him. I think that would be valuable to certainly some of the guys that are, people like a Don Armand. But Billy is a big ball carrier, and I guess this is where the Don Armand thing becomes a problem. If Don Armand wants to be, out on the wing and being a ball carrier too, and you just got to make sure that it's the right balance of players.
Yeah. It's well, I'm sure if Eddie tells him to play a certain way, he will play that way. I think Don Armand will be a good person to have out there, because South Africa will undoubtedly be as physical as they can, and Don Armand's not shy to get involved in that on that physical side of it. I
am just reading that, and this is an old post from kind of late January when the injury occurred, if you like. 12-week recovery period, they reckon, so April. So back then they were suggesting April would be his return. So okay. We should know more, I would think, in the next few weeks.
So you'd think that he'd be going on that tour, assuming nothing, assuming it goes.
I think so. Yeah,
it goes to time frame.
He certainly will have had enough time, given that he plays for Saracens. I think he'll have had enough time, and he will have played enough matches, as long as he's still fit, to be fighting fit and raring to go for England. So yeah, I can't see any reason why he wouldn't be part of that tour. I certainly don't think he's the sort of person that I know I mentioned about resting guys that have kind of guaranteed their position, but I think because of the way things have fallen for him with injuries, I think you have to take him, and I think that would be great for the team. As I was saying, I think it will lift the guys around him.
Yeah, no, I agree. So here's a question as a English rugby fan as a whole, on the wider part, not necessarily just looking at the England team. Saracens have Leinster in the quarterfinals of the European Cup this weekend. Do you want Saracens to win this? Because if they win, because obviously they're going to be playing their best players, using them. If they win, you're potentially giving those guys a lot more physical, a lot more cutting edge rugby. Whereas if they lose, there's an argument. It may give them a bit of ease. So, do you want them to win? I still do. I still want them to win.
Yeah, I think winning breeds winning, and I think you have to. I think England have had a pretty bad run, in the Premiership, as in Premiership sides, had went through a phase of performing quite badly. I think winning breeds winning, and I think if you with so many kind of key players coming from teams like Sarries, I think it would be good for them. It would be good for England for them to be winning form and winning competitions, and I think that will put them in the right mindset for England. So I'm going to say win.
Yes, no, I agree. I agree. And it was, and I know we covered this briefly earlier, but I still want to go on it. It was a bit weird, wasn't it? The fact that these England players who we were saying, a few weeks back, looked tired, looked lethargic, looked so energised this weekend. The likes of Maro, the likes of even Elliot Daly got a couple of tries, and I found it quite weird that a few weeks before they'd looked a bit tired, a bit lethargic, and then suddenly they're bouncing all over the place. Maro again at the ruck, sort of shouting. I just found it a bit strange.
Well, so two things. One is that in part a reaction to the media kind of deluge that about how all the England players were tired and needed to rest.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
And also, does this highlight the difference between club and country in terms of the intensity? People talk about it a lot. We watch on TV and it doesn't seem hugely different, but actually you hear in interviews and things that it's a massive step up from club to country. And the Six Nations is one of the toughest competitions in the world, so if not the toughest competition. So
I really hope that's not the case, because otherwise, by its nature, that's almost saying that perhaps these guys aren't able to handle. Which we know is not true because of what they've done previously.
No, I think they weren't able to handle it on this occasion. I don't think that means that they can't. They can't in the future if they can get their mindset right and they can get their game plan right. But yeah, I wonder if it's just that in terms of the tiredness. They are tired. These guys have played a lot of rugby. They've played a lot more than their counterparts in Ireland and Wales and Scotland. And is that one of the reasons why, for England, in a Six Nations competition, by the end, they were looking tired, they were looking lethargic, they were looking just a little bit low. Then you get this kind of media storm. Then they're back for club where they are, standout players in a much less intensive environment, and therefore they're able to kind of bring that extra bit of energy. Or did Maro of Itoje do that? Walk into the changing room, shut the door, and pass out.
Yeah, quite. Because he did a bit of a mock. People say it was aimed at Clive Woodward, whether it was necessarily aimed at him. But when he scored his try, he did his little celebration, pretending to be asleep, didn't he? He's a cheeky one, that Maro, isn't he?
Cheeky so and so.
He really is. But no, he did and mocked it. But do you know what? I like that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I like the fact that they can sort of laugh it off.
Clive Woodward would be absolutely over the moon to think that
no doubt.
Something he'd said had caused them all to, find an extra spark and turn things around. And maybe things like that's what they need. I'm sure that they are physically tired. That doesn't mean that the adrenaline can't get them up for it. It does question why was the adrenaline not there for the England games, but we're never going to be able to answer that. So all we can do now is hope that they can, get the rest that they need and kind of come back stronger and just with more energy, both mental and physical. I think, and that's because I think it's the mental energy that they appeared to be lacking. They lasted the 80 minutes, but there was just something that didn't seem there. And again, it's losing. If you get into the habit of winning, and particularly if you get into the habit of winning fairly comfortably. I mean, we talked about close matches where we never felt England were going to lose. Watching the games, we were like, yeah, we kind of always knew we were going to win, even though we won by 3 points. And we did it from behind in the last 5 minutes. We still, do you know what I mean? Whereas it's slightly different, where I think you're almost feeling like we're not going to do this.
Yeah, there was a real shift, wasn't there? And it's something we'd sort of mentioned before. There was that proper shift where it was, like we said, with Six Nations before, when we were behind against France, against Wales, was sort of 5-10 minutes ago, whatever it was. There was still, exactly that. You were thinking, we'll still win this. And then this year, it was just like, no, I don't think we will. I think we've let this one go.
Yeah.
And we need to shift it back on the other axis, which I'm sure we'll be doing. And actually, over the next couple of weeks, it's something that I want us to do on this, is to really have a look at. I mean, this week is obviously Europe, so there's a bit of a break Premiership, but really start looking at which up and coming players do we want to see go to South Africa, the likes of, not even the sort of Cow and Dickie Almonds because they've been involved, but perhaps the likes of the Dan Robsons or whoever it may be.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we put together a touring squad, a predicted touring squad for next week's episode, which will be maybe not predicted, the one we want to see basically. Who we want to see out there. So that's which of the current crop, and who from the sort of the up and comers, and if there are any others sort of on the fringes that we'd like to see out there. And obviously that will inevitably highlight who we think should be rested. And obviously, guys listening, please let us know. Just tweet us the names of players that you think should be on the tour, and we'll put together, the sort of the England Rugby Pod version of the touring squad. And when the time comes, I don't know when the announcement will come. We've obviously got a few months, but once we know, obviously what it actually is going to look like, we can have a look and see how things have changed. And obviously we'll keep an eye on. We'll keep an eye on the players and how they're performing, and that whole tiredness thing. We'll see how that's. I wonder whether Maro is thinking, I want to go on tour. I don't want to end my international season with 3 losses. And so he's kind of putting on this. I've got the energy. Take me on tour.
I suspect there's a competitive sportsman's bit to all the England players that have that in their head a bit, like I want to go on this tour. But I suspect if that decision is taken away from them,
but that's good. But that flips us right back to the beginning, where you quoted Johnny Wilkinson as saying that the difference was that they all wanted to be part of the squad. And if you got Maro of Itoje,
but the difference there is I heard it from Johnny Wilkinson's mouth. I haven't heard it from any of these guys' mouths yet.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is Ugo Monye said it, and therefore it's not true.
I don't know why Hugo. I don't think Hugo said anything about this. But no, I meant that I reckon there'll be a bit. I hope I don't bump into him. He's going to kick my ass. I think there's one thing that I think there'll be a part of them. Yeah, of course, that competitive side, that professional sportsman side of them will want them to go on the tour. But I think there'd also be a part of them that if it's taken out of them, there'd be a fair amount of relief. There'd be a bit like, do you know what? Yeah, it's a shame I'm missing out. But actually, I now have a complete summer off. I can just chill. I can do a proper pre-season without killing myself. Because don't forget, the pre-season itself is quite nice for them because they ease back into it. Whereas a lot of these guys, if they go on tour, yes, they come back and they still get a bit of time off. But not in the same way. And then as soon as they come back, it's back to full on sort of rugby again. Whereas if you do a pre-season, from what I understand, it's still a sort of, Monday to Friday, you still get your weekends off. You're easing back into things a lot more gently. You're building up and you're sort of mentally preparing yourself a lot more. Whereas if you're on a tour, you go away, get a bit of time off, then you're back in, 100% full throttle from the start. So, if these guys have that chance, have that break, ease themselves back in, I think that will be something that they'll quite enjoy as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm thinking you're right. It's something though that I think needs to be forced on them.
Yeah.
I think it's, but I like it. I think it's good if that is the case. If Maro is kind of fighting to be taken on tour, I don't think he should go, but I think it's the right attitude to have. And maybe he's looked back at the Six Nations and just gone, yeah, there was something missing. And having taken a break and being able to sort of digest it all, I'm looking back and I'm thinking, why was I not more fired up for it? Give me a chance, let me get out there again. And whilst I don't think we need to see him in South Africa in order for him to be a part of this, well, I know we don't, in order for him to be part of this England squad, I think it's good that he wants to.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I don't know for a fact that he wants to go. I'm saying what I'd imagine he's saying. Maro and I aren't talking at the moment. We had a fallout. He knows what he did. So when I say the sportsman side of him will want to go on that, that's me speculating. I don't know this. I'm not saying anyone said this or Maro said that. So let's not quote me and say this is gospel.
Fair enough. Well, I think, is there anything else that we want to cover this week? We've probably done a fairly good job. No. I think that's okay for this week. I think that's okay for now. Good. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for listening to us. Hopefully you're on the same page as us. Let us know if you're not, at England Rugby Pod on Twitter and Facebook. And obviously, keep listening. Get the names over to us, the people you want to see going on tour to South Africa. And we can cover that next week. And obviously, if you get the chance, please get onto iTunes, rate us, review us, let us know what you think. Spread the love, share the love, whatever. With friends and family. We're also on Acast. And I think we're also on Spotify. So if you're just listening to your music and fancy something different, you can check us out on Spotify too. And we'll catch you next week.